The theme of our conference today is connections, and I hope you were able to make connections over your bagels this morning, and we'll be able to make some connections in between while you go to your next workshops and in your workshops, because our network is as strong as the people in this room, and we can create a fabric by connecting with one another. I'm going to say a few words about what's happened since the last time we met here in person for our 25th anniversary. The world has changed in many ways. We and our students are facing new challenges, old challenges, and again, the theme of connections I think resonates for me more than ever in terms of the importance of mutual aid and the importance of just helping each other through the challenges that we face. But in more promising news, over the past year, culminating in a big announcement in November, you may know that New York State Education Department has made a series of announcements about an effort to what they call reimagine education in New York State. And they want it to be, as they say, more student-centered, more authentic, more meaningful. Does this sound familiar? Is this what we do? Yes, this is what we do. And all these efforts include a very, very long overdue recommendation to finally decouple the Regents exams from a graduation requirement in New York State. And so we have lived under this for too long. Our students have suffered for too long, and we are so grateful that this is under consideration at the state level. We also are hopeful that that means that more schools will be able to do the type of work that you are doing in your classrooms every day. And we are wary, because as of right now, the policy change to remove the Regents from graduation requirements is not slated to be voted on until 2027. So we have this lovely recommendation, and it will take all of our efforts and support to actually make it a reality, and that we're hoping will happen sooner, but 2027 is what's on the calendar for right now. And there's currently no discussion going on at all about the elimination of the Regents exams or de-emphasizing them in school accountability measures. So the state accountability system actually rests on scores in Regents exams in all 4 major subject areas, 3 of which are required under federal law, and that is not under discussion to change. So even while we are looking to reimagine education and we are very supportive of the vision of the state ed department, we also want to make sure that schools truly can do the work of centering students and have the conditions that we as a consortium have had to free ourselves from the need to teach towards the test. Also, in the past year, this past spring, a bunch of stakeholders met in a series of meetings, and the consortium was able to codify a set of core values, which, if you haven't seen them, your program turns into a wonderful poster that you can use to remind yourself of what these values are. And it was a long process. There were many drafts emphasizing our value of reflection and revision. And we came down to 6: performance assessment, inquiry teaching, choice and voice, reflection and revision, school as community, and collective action. And we saw these as the essential elements of our schools and our network as a whole, and the things that a focus of a school towards performance assessment allowed, focusing on performance assessment allowed our schools to be, right? Because you know that your school is not just the assessment system, it's all the pieces that lead a student to be successful for graduation. You're also going to hear from 2 speakers today that I think will both embody the theme of connections and also will weave into what they say many of the themes of these core values. So we're hoping that you can see that reflected in the work that we do today. We have 2 distinguished guests. First, Bashir Juwara, and then Dr. Aliyah Tyner-Mullings. Bashir immigrated to this country as a teenager and attended and graduated from International Community High School, which is a school in the Bronx and one of 5 consortium schools affiliated with the Internationals Network for Public Schools that work with newly arrived immigrants, multilingual learners. Bashir went on after ICHS to study at Gutman Community College, received an associate's degree, and then transferred to Hunter College, from which he graduated in June. He served as student body president at both institutions, and through this work embodied the consortium spirit of collective action in his leadership and advocacy for public education and public school students. He is currently applying to graduate school to study international affairs, and in many ways, Bashir represents so much of what we hope for all of our students to achieve, and I'm so honored to have him speak to us today.
Good morning, everyone. It is one of my greatest honors to be here today as one of the guests. Before I start, I want to thank AJ, Jonathan Katz, known to me as Dr. Katz, and Ann Cooks for giving me the opportunity to be in front of you today. I was born and raised in Gambia, West Africa. At the age of 17, I was moved by my own to the United States to get an education. I attended International Community High School in the Bronx, a school dedicated exclusively to serve immigrant students. As a teenager balancing high school and full-time job to support my family back home, the journey was far from easy. Even though I was highly motivated, there were moments when I considered dropping out of high school. I received a phone call from our principal, Ms. Brenner, who urged me not to give up. As a teenage boy living in the United States without any of my parents, it was extremely challenging. She reminded me of the values of education and encouraged me to persevere, which was one of ICH's and is still one of ICH's core values. There were many other adults at ICH's who supported me, like Ms. Eva with us today. The structure of ICHS, which prioritized students paired with principal and guardian counselors who understand and related to our background, play a pivotal role in keeping me motivated in school. However, the pressure to work full-time, my immigration status, and self-doubt often made me feel that college was out of reach for me. I questioned whether I was good enough, smart enough, or my accents would hold me back. I also doubted my chance of success since ICHS was not a region-based school. A fun fact, when college admissions started to come in, seeing some of my friends get accepted into four-year schools like City College, Brooklyn College, Hunter College, and SUNY schools like Buffalo, it took a toll on my mental health. It made me feel that I was not good enough. Fortunately, I was guided by mentors like Ms. DeLaro, who understand the challenges I face and connected me with government alumni, Cesarina, who was a peer mentor and student government at the time. Cesarina shared her experience about Government Community College, expressing its robust support system, student-centered approach, and accessibility with advisors. Qualities that align with my needs, Ms. DeLaro knew that I needed a nurturing college environment to thrive. If I had gone straight to a largest institution like Hunter College, I doubt that I would be standing in front of you today. The supportive environment at government and my experience as a student leader gave me the confidence and purpose I needed to succeed in college. I ended up graduating ahead of some of my friends who went straight to four-year schools. One of my most impressive comebacks from being rejected by Hunter admission to becoming their student body president in one of the most crucial times in higher ed. Thank you. One of the most, ended up being from rejected to being in the leadership role in one of the most crucial times in higher ed history. The supportive environment at government mirrored that ICHS, the student body with whom I shared cultural tradition, the encouragement from faculty and teaching method that challenged me to think critically, all prepare me for my next steps in the academic journey. This culture of support did not arise by chance. It was built by dedicated members, dedicated educators, like our honorable speaker today, Dr. Aliyah Turner-Mullin, who joined Government Community College in 2011. Was instrumental in shaping the institution foundation. with a doctorate degree in sociology from CUNY Graduate Center, a history of research in alternative education models. She taught a wealth of knowledge and passion to her role. As part of the second group of faculty hired at Gutman, Dr. Tyner Mullins contributed to creation of the college core elements, including Gutman learning outcomes. Her commitment to student success was evident in her leadership as the first chair of Gutman Chapter of Professional Staff Congress and her work on required ethnographic work course, where she authored the open educational resource ethnography made essay. Dr. Tyner Mullins' research and writing, like her book, Critical Small Schools, Beyond Privatization of New York City Urban Education Reform, highlight the importance of student-centered learning environment. These approaches resonate deeply with me because they reflect the transformative power of schools like ICHS and Gutman, where students from diverse backgrounds are empowered to succeed. I later transferred to Hunter College, graduating as a student body president in the summer of 2024 with a major in political science and minor in international relations. I stand here today as a testament to what is possible when institutions and educators like Dr. Tyner Mullins create spaces to foster equity, inclusion, student access. They ensure that students like me, once certain about our future, can grow, thrive, ultimately give back to our community. Please join me and welcome Dr. Tyner Mullins to the stage.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. And thank you, Bashir. Thank you for the introduction. It was great to hear your story, and I'm so happy that Gutman could be there for you. So I first want to acknowledge that the land we gather on today is that of the Lenape people. New York City has one of the largest urban Native American and indigenous populations in the United States, and we should honor those lost before us through genocide and their forced removal from the territory, and pay our respects to those who still live here. You can do this by finding out more about them or donating to a charity that supports Lenape or other indigenous, Native American, or First Nation peoples. Now you might be asking yourself, even after that great introduction, why I'm here. I have also asked myself that, given that I don't really like public speaking, but maybe you're just excited to hear me speak without using the entire 40 minutes that I was given. I think I'm here because, like all of you, I was a teacher in a consortium school, and like many of you, I am the parent of a kid in a progressive education school. And like some of you, I was a progressive pre-consortium student, and like several of you, although maybe in less formal ways, I'm a progressive education and consortium researcher. I know there's so much going on in the world right now and so many things that will lead you to despair and lead you to fight. I hope today will allow you a moment of celebration. I know we all have a story that led us to be here today. Let me quickly tell you mine. I began at Central Park East 1 when I was 6 years old. When I was 11, I graduated from CPE and entered SPES. As many of you know, at SPES, we have the graduation requirement of completing 14 portfolios, which is what we called our PBATs, and a senior project. Each portfolio was a collection of items from your time at school, graded as a complete package. 7 of them were presented to a committee. It wasn't until I spent my final SPES semester abroad and completed my final project that I understood how different my school was. My first academic engagement with sociology and education occurred during my final project as I examined the social, educational, and cultural aspects of France and compared them to home. Although my interest in both sociology and education began here, it wasn't until I was a college senior that I found out what sociology was. Instead, I majored in English because I went to SPES, so of course I was a good reader and a good writer. I went on to teach math at Humanities Preparatory Academy as part of a teaching fellowship after graduation, and then to the CUNY Graduate Center to get my doctorate in sociology. I like all the cheering. I'm good for it. After a postdoc at Teachers College and a job as an assistant professor at Morgan State University in Baltimore, I ended up at Gutman Community College, where I helped to create and open the small new community college within the CUNY system. Now I'd like to check in with all of you quickly. Now I can't actually see you, but you can see each other. So, so raise your hand if you have been teaching for 10 or more years. All right, so raise your hand if you've been teaching between 9 and 5 years. Raise your hand if you just started teaching in the last 5 years. All right. Raise your hand if you come from or have children in a progressive school. Raise your hand if you have published work about your time learning or working in a PBAT, progressive, or portfolio school. Raise your hand if you've written anything down about a pattern you noticed or idea you had about your classroom that you think was worth sharing. Raise your hand if you noticed something but haven't written it down or discussed it with a colleague. All of these things make you the experts in how this model works, while also knowing places where there are challenges. I urge you all to record what you can. As you teach your students, you are the people who can tell your stories. You are also the people who can teach from these stories. Like many of you, and like AJ mentioned, I was thrilled last year with the Blue Ribbon Commission's recommendation to update the state's high school graduation requirements. Their portrait of a graduate is a representation of the work you have all done. As many of you know, it outlines 7 key areas for students to demonstrate proficiency: critical thinking, effective communication, cultural and social emotional competencies, innovative problem solving, literacy across content areas, and a status as a global citizen. My first response was, duh. In reading the articles that summarize these decisions, I saw 2 questions asked. What does this mean, and what does it look like? First, it means, and again, assuming they vote on it, it means that in 2029, when my child enters high school, they and their classmates will have an educational experience close to mine. They will no longer have to take the Regents as they are now. This will happen even if they don't go to a consortium school, but I'm letting you all know that is still my plan for them. Maybe it also means that someone run my book, which I do periodically send to city and state leadership, or a similar scholarship. Or maybe someone saw and acknowledged all the years of work you all have been doing with thousands of students. Or that the work that you and people before you did led a graduate of a progressive school to be on that commission, and he also helped to lead the state DOE to that decision. And it also means, congratulations. You are now officially the ambassadors for how this can work. I don't feel with my 2 years of teaching in a consortium school that I can tell you how to do this, but I can provide you with information for yourself and others to help you on this road that you've traveled for so long, on your way to the Emerald City, which I heard is not so great, but no spoilers, I haven't seen Wicked yet. So what does it look like? You are what it looks like. Look around you and recognize where you are aligned and where you are different, because this will require all of your voices. You will have to be leaders, not only in your own classrooms and schools, but for the entire state, and hopefully, eventually, other states. This means that teachers, principals, students, and parents will be looking to you to help them learn what to do. It will be up to you to show them that this portrait of a graduate isn't the only change schools need. We all know that you can't just do one thing and think school will automatically be better and the teachers will have more success with their students. At SPES, as in many of your classrooms, this looked like inquiry teaching that included the habits of mind, 5 guidelines that all students in the school were strongly encouraged to use in all classes, as well as teaching students to be critical thinkers and use their minds well. These habits of mind emphasize the significance of using evidence and making connections between assignments across disciplines and throughout the entire course. When asked if they remember the habits of mind, less than a quarter of the students in my research could specifically name them, but almost 3/4 could describe what they were and felt that the habits of mind were so ingrained in them that while they could not name them, they used them every day. Those who could name them, myself included, often remembered them using the school's initials as one of the teachers had posted above the board in her classroom. So SPES teachers provided an intellectual base as students named critical reading, analytic thinking, and critical thinking as skills they learned in SPES. SPES teachers expressed that they had given the students the tools necessary to become public intellectuals and democratic citizens. Almost all of the former students surveyed had participated in some kind of political action. And in a world where freedoms of the press are challenged and the right to protest, to be who you are, and where you're from is in question, these are even more significant. It is also important to note that my research happened 20 years ago. These former students, like former students from your schools, are in different positions of power now and can and will use those positions to fight for what is right and use the lessons you have taught them to take care of each other and the world around them. We need them to push us forward, and they need you to show them how. 20 years ago, one of the former students in my research said, "I think the mission of SPES was to address some of the serious problems with our public school system, especially in regard to how it services students of color. I think SPES shows that there's a possibility to do that it's a goal that's worth pursuing on its own. I don't think it achieved it fully. It was kind of a new thing. I feel it was a new idea. I feel like it needed, like any new idea, it needs to be worked out. It needs the kinks ironed out. So if there's ever a second incarnation that can sort of build upon recognizing the weaknesses of the earlier model and maybe can fix that, it can probably do better. You are that. You are the second and third and fifth incarnations of that. And since then, many others have done research, including another project I was part of, which examined the transition of schools into the consortium, as well as the CUNY pilot, which I was not involved in. It enlivens me to see what things have changed and what has stayed the same. In our transitional research, in which I was a co-PI with Rosa Rivera-McCutcheon under principal investigator Maria Hanzopoulos, and also work with some other folks here, we found that using PBATs in inquiry teaching allowed spaces for teachers to discuss content, curriculum, rigor, expectations, and the purposes of schooling, while also finding space for teachers to consider how to create opportunities for students to ask critical questions on complex topics, learn more about students' needs, and provide a more accurate assessment of student evaluation. Like SPES students, the students we surveyed in consortium schools agreed that they were able to be more creative, and they were able to look at the world differently and present their points of view and opinion. Additionally, students expressed that PBATs made them more interested in learning. We also observed that PBATs were not just an end goal, but that they also helped to create school culture through the values of care, support, respect, and, as Paulo Freire said, these schools are also the solution of the teacher-student contradiction by reconciling the poles of that contradiction so that both are simultaneously teachers and students. In my SPES research, one of the most significant problems was that after spending between 2 and 14 years in an educational program that was not traditional, students had to enter traditional educational institutions. Former students and teachers of the first 5 graduating classes referred to a culture shock in the process of moving from SPES into college. And even though I ended up at a small liberal arts institution, this mirrors my experience. SPES students commented on their deficiencies in traditional study skills, such as note-taking and tests, because this was not required in their SPES classes. Students reported that their discomfort with the lecture format also made some students uncomfortable asking questions to clarify their notes and going to see the professor after class. When I started at Gutman, I was excited to help create a school within CUNY that seemed like a natural progression of my SPES experience and a solution to this problem. And while I still see Gutman as a great space for your students, your CUNY pilot shows how some of these problems may have changed. Like SPES students, consortium students reported greater comfort with college papers and research projects. But they were also comfortable asking college faculty for help, taking feedback, revising, and seeking help when faced with challenges. That research also showed that students admitted to CUNY through the pilot program had higher first semester college GPAs, more initial credits, and persisted in college after their first year at higher rates than peers from other New York City schools. I hope that this information leads you to feel good about what you do every day and the changes you've made in the lives of individuals and the larger system, because here's the challenging part. As this grows, we might need your ambassadors to spread out, to start to support other schools and to start other schools. And this brings us to SPES's narrative of transformation. SPES was created, became world-renowned, diffusing its theories, methods, structure, and pedagogy across the New York City school system, and as I learned in France, the world, but then lost its center in the process. This supernova effect is when an original version falls victim to its own success. It flourishes, expands to its limits, and then dissipates, spreading remnants of itself from which brand new organizations and institutions spring. So I say to you, make sure your schools have succession plans. Be aware of what your leaders bring to the table and what you lose when they move on. Make sure others can take over and make sure they learn what that means. And this is not just about principals and directors, it's really about all of you. Even with all the work you've already done and are planning to do, you will also need to be at the forefront of helping schools make these changes and making sure schools don't use this process to funnel students into groups and further track them by assessment method. If they do, you will need to bring them into your schools and show them how to meet and exceed their goals. Our research found that those who were transitioning into the consortium reported that it took a lot of work. More than a quarter of teachers surveyed said that PBATs were more work than was expected over the 3 years that they were transitioning into the consortium. But we know that great education takes time, it takes energy, and it takes dedication, and our students are worth it. And it may be on you to remind other teachers at other schools that it was worth it, and show them how, because in our research we found that students were often held to a higher standard and pushed and challenged to do more quality work with PBATs. Now, despite these challenges, and despite the supernova, we move on. The fact that I'm standing here before you today, telling you about the college that I helped to create, and how our classes include a lot of student-led research and both individual and group projects, and how I personally use a post-graduation plan in my class, mirroring one of my portfolios from high school, tells you that we continue on. That a former SPES student was on the Blue Ribbon Commission brings us full circle. And despite my protestations, the fact that my child wants to take standardized tests because they think they are fun tells me we are moving in the right direction. For them, taking these tests is just another skill that they're learning. If everything goes well, which I'm sure it will, because of course the state will provide lots of funding to support everything we've spoken about today, the year my child enters high school, which I cannot imagine, is the year the new graduation requirements will be fully operational. As much as I think they shouldn't take tests, I can give them the choice because of you. So if you take nothing else away from what I said today, I want you to do these 5 things. 1, recognize where you are. Know that you're here because there is work to do. There is always work to do. But acknowledge that you've had successes and you've done good work. 2, appreciate that you are here today. This collective action of showing up here to learn from each other and support each other is important. You will continue to need this, and other schools may look to you and the time you spend here as they figure out how to move in the right direction. 3, take a moment and write down something about today, something good about what's working right and what's challenging. Take a moment to note how you overcame challenges, how you were innovative, or how you did something different, because all of this is going to be needed when we are moving forward and trying to push everyone else forward. 4, embrace your differences. There will be those who say, oh, I can't do that because those aren't my students, or my school doesn't work that way. And you can show them how you embrace your differences to serve different populations of students and how you are able to come up with solutions that serve everyone in different ways and can be adapted for different schools. And 5, keep doing what you're doing. Finally, I want to leave you with a quote from one of my teachers from SPES about its legacy. I could answer for the 10 years I was there and say that SPES was at the forefront of a whole movement that forced education to take a look at itself and to really look at other ways of approaching students and delivering education. And I think SPES did that very well for those years. And I think in many ways it continues through the teachers who have left and gone on to new schools. So in that sense, it seems to me that the philosophy is very vibrant and a good one. Who knows? Our society thrives on firebrands. We need another firebrand to come on, or maybe a whole series of little kindling. Thank you for being the firebrands that keep us going and teaching your students to be the change that we need. Thank you.